This is the 1.4 Solving Equations Notes Part 2. So I'm going to start here with example 2. We just practiced solving, reviewing how to solve basic equations, and now we're going to try and practice solving equations that mainly contain variables. So for part A, to solve for W, we'll start by writing the equation A equals L times W, length times width. Since we're solving for W, sometimes helps maybe to circle that, and then to isolate W, we would need to get rid of the L, doing the inverse of multiply, which is divide. Canceling those out, W equals A over L. For a parallelogram, very similar. Writing the formula, area equals base times height. To solve for B, again, we would divide both sides by H. So the base is equal to the area divided by the height for any parallelogram. For a trapezoid, so you average the two bases, if you recall, to find the area for a trapezoid, and then multiply by the height. So you have the picture here to remind you what is going on there. And in order to isolate the variable A, we need to divide both sides by H and then multiply both sides by 2. So almost like the reciprocal. So this is almost like an H over 2 if we were to put this over 1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 over H. If I multiply, it's like multiplying by 2, dividing by H on both sides. Multiplying by 2, dividing by H, which will cancel out both the 2 and the H. So 2A over H equals A plus B. So our last step then would just be to subtract B from both sides. So our final answer looks like A equals 2A over H minus B. Now notice this is a capital A versus a lowercase a, and that's really important to maintain capitalization when we're doing algebra. Lastly, solve for R in the circle formula. So A equals pi r squared. First we would have to divide both sides by pi. So A over pi equals r squared. And then recall that the inverse operation of squaring is square rooting. So we could square root both sides, leaving us with r equals the square root of A over pi. Oh, we need to include the pi in the square root there. And there's your answer. Now in the back we have an application question that says the flowers, so flower carpets incorporate hundreds of thousands of brightly colored flowers as well as grass, tree bark, and sometimes fountains to form intricate designs and motifs. The flower carpet shown here from Grand Place in Brussels, Belgium has a perimeter of 200 meters. What are the dimensions of the flower carpet? So step 1 is really identifying the given information and what is being asked. So we want to know the dimensions. So just within the picture we have more given information. Additional information that we know from previous experience is the formula for perimeter is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. That's for a rectangle. Since they've given us 200 for the perimeter, we can replace 200 for P. Substitute that in. It looks like the length here is x, so we're going to do 2x. And the width is 3x, so we're going to substitute 3x in for the width. So here we have one variable within an equation so we can solve. Starting by simplifying both sides, so 200 equals 2x plus, when we multiply, that's 6x. So 2x plus 6x is 8x. And then we could divide both sides by 8. And we get 25. X equals 25. And we were talking in terms of meters. Now it does ask us to find the dimensions, so we would need to go back and say, okay, what is the length, what is the width? The length then is just x, or 25, and the width is 3x, or 3 times 75, sorry, 3 times 25, which is 75. So the dimensions would be 25 by 75 meters. Lastly, example 4, practicing solving for x. Again, mainly variables involved here, so in order to solve for x in a question like A, we would first have to get x by itself. So to do that, you notice both of these have an x, so we could actually factor that out. That would be a common factor, leaving us with an a. So a times x divided by x leaves us with a. B times x divided by x leaves us with b. So that's factoring. A review from Algebra 1. And then, again, we want to isolate the variable, so we would divide both sides by a plus b. The whole thing. We would divide both sides by that whole quantity, a plus b. Cancels out, so x equals c divided by a plus b is your final answer. Next we have x divided by a minus 5 equals b. To solve for x, first we would, looks like I'm going to run out of room here, so I'm going to scoot that over. X over a minus 5 equals b. Add 5 to both sides first. I'm trying to get x by itself here. So x over a equals b plus 5. And then we could multiply both sides by a. Since this is divide, the inverse would be to multiply both sides by a. So x equals a times the quantity b plus 5. A more simple form of that would be, if we distributed the a, we would have ab plus 5a. Lastly, 2/5 times the quantity x plus 1 equals g. Now we're trying to solve for x. If we went ahead and distributed 2/5, that would actually take us a little bit longer. So instead I'm going to start off by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of 2/5, which is 5/2. I'm going to multiply both sides by 5/2. Canceling it out 2/5. Leaving us with just x plus 1 on the left and 5/2 g on the right. Lastly, we would subtract 1 from both sides, so we have x equals 5/2 g minus 1.